Welcome back, everyone, to OpenLine. Talking about early childhood education. We have with us Mike Carpenter and Lisa Wiltshire. They are both with Tennesseans for Quality Early Education. We talked about the importance of third grade, the importance of getting kids ready by that grade, and the importance of having good schools and teachers and environments. But then there's a big heavy dose of reality that a lot of kids are coming from homes that are messed up. They're coming to school hungry. They're coming to school with a bunch of baggage. And so how do we as a society deal with that reality? We could have the best schools in the world, and yet the people that are coming in there, the children, are coming in with a lot of difficult stuff going on. What do we do about that?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because it really is something that we have to look at. Schools don't exist in isolation, and children don't exist in isolation. And so some of the policies that we advocate for really are directly about strengthening the family system. So a lot of families and parents face immense challenges: stress, poverty, substance abuse, and there's just a lot. And children come to school with that trauma. And so in addition to making sure that teachers and school staff are prepared, we advocate for policies that support families and parents. So in those early years with babies and toddlers, we support evidence-based programs like home visiting, where a home visitor, a service person, will come into the home and actually help parents bond with their children, connect with their children, teach them about development, get them connected to health and mental health care. And that needs to continue. So we certainly support wraparound services, whether they be in preschools, child care centers, or elementary schools, making sure that families can get connected to the services in the community that they need. And the school or the pre-K program can be a real kind of center of gravity, because that's where the children and families go. And so having staff and programs that can actually link parents and families to the services they need, we believe that is as important as having the strength in the teaching and learning and instruction in those schools as well.
The concern, and I don't know that anybody would disagree with anything you're saying, but the concern would be that it would be expensive. Again, we're a state with limited resources. How do we accomplish some of this? It sounds very good, but what do we do about being a state with limited resources?
Well, I think one thing that we have to do is we have to prioritize. We have to say what is a priority for us. There are lots of wants in the state. There are lots of needs, but and education and the care and well-being of children has to be top in terms of priority. So we have to prioritize first. The other thing that I'd like to give a shout out to one of our partners, to the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth, and the work that they're doing with adverse childhood experiences through their Building Strong Brains program. And one of the things they're doing that's not expensive, frankly, is educating the public, educating people who work with children, people who are in the child care and who teachers, about trauma-informed care and about the things that children deal with in their homes: abject poverty, violence, substance abuse, those things that impact their ability to learn at school, and how to address those things, how to approach those things. And so there's a lot happening in the state already around adverse childhood experiences and the trauma that kids experience and bring to school with them. So there are things that can be done that are low cost or cost effective, but priority has to be on our kids.
And we've had them on, and they've talked about that, and the impact that trauma can have on a young child's brain and development. It's more than just a difficult experience. It has a lasting impact and ramifications, and that is interesting. And so if it is framed that if we can deal with that early on, it can save us a lot of money down the road, I guess that could be positive. Are you having success in framing it in that way? Do you think that's kind of breaking through all of the debate?
Well, I think yes, and I'd love to take all the credit for that, but TCCY and others have been out there on the front lines of this for much longer. But had the opportunity to sit in last year on a summer study committee, the health committee, where they talked about adverse childhood experiences, and it was really fascinating to see both Democrats and Republicans in the legislature talk about the importance of intervening early. And so it's starting to click. People are starting to understand just what you said, that if we intervene early, not only do we help that child, but we save ourselves, you know, potentially millions of dollars down the road, and it's better for our state, better for our families, and so yes, I think that message is starting to get through.
I hope it does. Let's go with Richard here on line 1. Hello, Richard.
Hey, how you doing?
Great. Go right ahead.
Hey, I got a question. It seems like every year in Metro, the school system is always asking for more money to improve the schools, but that's been going on for the last 10 years, I guess. And it doesn't seem to help the quality of education here. When is that going? It doesn't seem to bring any kind of results where we keep asking for more money. It doesn't make any sense to me. It seems like there's another problem going on, and that's my question.
Well, I appreciate that. So here's someone who's saying we seem to keep giving more and more money to schools, and he's frustrated about the progress that he's seeing. I bet he's not alone. What do you say there?
Well, I think one thing I would say is that, you know, in the name of our organization is quality, and one of the things that I said earlier on is that you know, when you're talking about pre-K and expanding pre-K, that we've got to get quality right first before we expand it. And so yes, just simply adding more dollars is not going to result in better outcomes if we continue to do the same things and just expand the same things. So we have to improve quality, and some of the things that Lisa talked about in terms of policy and practice have to be changed, and then adequately funded. But we've got to change how we teach and how we instruct and before we you know, start to look at adding additional funds for that.
So when you talk about changing how we teach, I know there might be teachers out there that get concerned about hearing that. There's so many mandates already on them that I know plenty of teachers, and they're overwhelmed. And what you said earlier about, yeah, kids respond when they have a great teacher in the classroom. There is no doubt about that. But sometimes they are so overwhelmed with so many different people saying do this and that and mandate here and there that I don't know how they do it. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that might concern some, but how, if somebody is concerned by that, what do you say?
Well, one thing that really gets to the last caller's question as well, and this question too, is that the yardstick in Tennessee has changed. So we've heard a lot about standards and assessments, but the standards have changed. What kids need to know and be able to do now and at the level of depth now has evolved, and it's changed over time. And Tennessee has had to really up the standards, and there's higher expectations, and those expectations have been steadily increasing since about 2010, you know, the last decade. We've seen a lot of change, and so the way that affects and ripples through the system is that I understand that frustration. I've got children in metro schools as well, and I certainly want the highest quality for them. But we have to know that instruction has to change with the times, and so these big, we call them instructional shifts, that teachers have to adopt and get used to is challenging. And if they don't have enough support to do that, then it's even more challenging. I think one of our policies that's an absolute priority for us is ensuring that there is will and commitment and funding to have very relevant and targeted professional development and the kind of job-embedded support that teachers need. They need coaching, they need to work together, they need to be a part of learning communities. They can't do it alone, and they shouldn't be expected to do it alone either. All
right, let's go to Reverend Fuzz. Reverend Fuzz, hello.
Hey, thank you. You know, I've been following this for many, many years on education. I heard you talk about wraparound, and then the frustrated caller about there not being any improvements. But in the past 15 years, metro schools have improved, I think, from 75% up to like 85%. So I think that's kind of fair, or you can tell me that's not true. And on these wraparound, I talked to somebody high up in human services in Tennessee. They're piloting a wraparound, she called it, program in Memphis. They're doing 75 people. How many are we doing here? And I give you a good example, Ben. I can think of a family that if they had had a wraparound social worker on that family, that mother who went to emergency room 6 times that year, was hospitalized 3 or 4 times, I bet that would have been cut in half easily. Those children would have went to school. The son would not have gone to jail. So that's just one family I think of if they had a wrap. So when you talk about the expense of it, just think of that person who didn't go to the hospital but half the number of times, and the state pays for that person to go to the hospital. So, you know, things like that. And I want to push again, you know, I know we improved on teacher pay and on outcomes, but everyone continues to talk about the downside and the failures. Are there some good things that's really happened in Nashville MNPS?
I think that's important. I appreciate the question, Reverend Fuzz. Thank you very much. Yeah, so the first caller was a little frustrated. Like, we keep putting money in, and he felt like we're not seeing enough improvement. It is fair to say there is improvement in some ways. And again, what they're up against is insane. They have a lot that they're up against. He's asking there, what are some positive things? Y'all have just done a survey. There's some concerns, but what are some positive things? What do you think?
You want to go first? Or you want me
Go
to?
ahead, Lisa.
Yeah. Well, first of all, at the state level, I know this caller was talking about Metro Nashville. Our graduation rate has improved. I think that's what Reverend Fuzz was referring to. Graduation rate has improved. Our average ACT score has improved, which is the hardest thing to move, really, when you think about it, because that's really cumulative learning. We have seen improvements. Again, I talked about the standards changes. Between 2011 and 2015, Tennessee was the fastest improving state in the nation. We have closed achievement gaps, like the achievement gap in science between males and females. We have seen the achievement gap between blacks and whites closing over time. These things don't happen quickly. We like to think we can have double-digit gains every year in every subject, and that's hard to do. But we have seen significant growth and significant propelled growth across the state. We have pockets of excellence, districts that are moving even faster than others. We have reward schools, and the state has really been trying to learn from those pockets of excellence. What we want to make sure, what we advocate for, is that everybody's paying attention to the schools that are still behind, the kids who still may not be needing what they deserve, and for the kids who are accelerated to make sure they keep growing. I mean, this is just it's a never-ending a game, if you will, or battle. I mean, we have to stay on this long term. We have seen success, and what we're trying to do is build on that success and have even more going forward.
And I would add to that one thing the state is doing well and needs to continue is early literacy. The Governor Haslam, First Lady Haslam, Commissioner McQueen, they've really pushed early literacy across the state. That showed up big in our survey as a priority for voters. And the Read to Be Ready program is a program that focuses on early literacy and that is partially privately funded, and that funding will be running out. So one of the things that we'll be doing in this next legislative session is approaching the next governor and the new legislature with a request to continue that funding.
One reason this came out now is because we are in election season. Right. And so I want to take a break and then come back and talk about that. What sort of reception are you getting from all manner of candidates? So we'll take a break. And there, if you want to call, there's the number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.